glitch, please. All right, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Joining us now as we turn the conversation back to more important issues, certainly, is Amir Handjani. He is an Iranian-American attorney and global energy executive. Hello, Amir.
Hi, Steve. Nice to be with you.
Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Okay, I want to pick up on something that I want to start with Syria. We were speaking with John Bolton earlier in the show and talking about the fact that there's a report that Israel may have, in fact, bombed Syrian missile launching bases or missile launches within Syria yesterday. And, of course, nobody in Israel talks about it. Even Syria doesn't like to talk about it when they get hit by Israel, which they have a number of times in the past. Where do you see the whole Syrian situation going? I mean, you know, the talks were going to include Iran, not include Iran, and they lasted for a half hour. And then, I mean, I don't even know, to be honest with you, at this point, where they are. The U.S. insisting that Assad goes, and Syria saying, no way.
Yeah, it's a real mess. It's I mean, above and beyond the politics, it's a humanitarian catastrophe, what's happening in Syria. But both sides, all sides seem to be dug in. The U.S. and the Sunni Gulf states want Assad to go. The Sunni Gulf states want the U.S. to intervene militarily, which the U.S. has decided not to do. Iran and Russia back Assad, and therefore you sort of have this stalemate. I think the last thing I heard out of the Geneva talks over the weekend was that both sides are talking to each other with deaf ears. So in the meantime, you're going to still have the civil war on the ground, more lives lost, and it's unclear how things in Syria will unravel. Is it possible that Israel continue to have incursions in Syria? Yes. Will we hear about it? Probably not.
Right, and of course that was, they say it was because of rocket launches for the missiles, the Russian missiles that Syria might have acquired from Russia, and they didn't want them to be able to use that, certainly, and that would be the Assad regime. All right, moving over to Iran. Again, as I mentioned with John Bolton, I mean, every single day we get the rhetoric, and the rhetoric is ratcheted up day by day from the very people, I mean, and we're not talking about insignificant players there, from the very people. Now they're denying the Holocaust again, and they want, they want war with the U.S. and we're not going to stop our program, and the agreement doesn't say we have to do anything. I mean, why does the United States? Well, there are two questions. Why does the United States put up with that, although that goes to Obama and who he is, I believe? But why does Iran feel the need to antagonize, while they're trying to work out agreements? Explain it from their perspective.
I'll try. I think what you have is both sides trying to win the PR war. And
I don't think we're trying to win it.
Well,
we don't care.
Well, I think there's a bit of posturing done by the Obama administration before Congress to make them look like they're being strong and tough with Iran, and therefore they put out this spin about how tough their terms are, and the Iranians in turn have come back and said no, we're going to be tougher, and they continue with their rhetoric. But in the interim, there's been a deal done. It's been a significant deal to at least freeze the program where it is. Iran has decided to convert its highly enriched uranium to essentially a blend, not put new centrifuges online. It's sort of stopped the program where it is for at least 6 months to give both sides time and space to negotiate a final deal. Will that happen? No one knows. Your guess is as good as mine.
You believe? By the way, we're talking to Amir Handjani, Iranian-American attorney and global energy executive here on the Steve Malzberg Show. You trust Iran?
I'm not the one making the decision. The question is going to be whether the IAEA and the P5+1 come back and say that there are verifiable steps taken by the Iranian government to roll back their program. So far, with this interim deal, they've come back and said that Iran has lived up to its end of the bargain for what they've agreed to. Now, whether that will lead to a more conclusive, final deal, so-called grand bargain, if you will, time will tell.
Do you think it's advisable for the United States to, to even have talked to them while they're still holding Americans? Shouldn't we not have asked for a goodwill gesture of some kind while they're still have their satellites like Hezbollah? And while they're still killing Americans in Afghanistan with IEDs and have the blood on their hands of, I mean, they just honored the terrorist who threw the Marine on the tarmac so many years ago. They celebrated him. I mean, they have American blood dripping from their hands right now, and our president goes around, begging to shake those hands and to embrace these people. And I, for one, and many others in Congress and elsewhere, find it disturbing, to say the least.
Right. Well, I would have to disagree with you there in the sense that, we talk to our enemies all the time. The U.S. and Russia during the Cold War were, a button away from annihilating each other. We talked to the Russians. We talked to the Chinese in the 70s when they were backing the Viet Cong, and they had the blood of 50,000 servicemen on their hands.
But here's the difference: the Iranians. See, let's talk to the Soviets. There was the assurance of or mutually assured destruction, the threat of mutually assured destruction. The Russians, they didn't want to die. They didn't want to be annihilated, and neither did we. So that was a preventative measure. The Iranian religious philosophy of the Ayatollahs and the mullahs is that Armageddon brings the missing imam to come back down. Their whole theocracy, their whole country and religious belief is based on Armageddon. So how do you trust a country with that, and who constantly threatens to wipe Israel off the map, which would probably facilitate that? How do you trust them when they don't care if they die? I don't mean the people of Iran. I mean the people who are in charge in Iran.
I mean, I think that's a lot. I mean, certainly their rhetoric speaks to that, but in practice, they're quite pragmatic in how they approach geopolitical affairs. I mean, they've talked about this Israel, wiping Israel off the map, but can they wipe Israel off the map? Of course not.
If they had a nuclear weapon, they certainly could.
And if they did that, if that's a big if, but if they had a nuclear weapon, the very thought of Iran launching a nuclear missile in Israel's direction would create massive retaliation.
Which speaks to their religious beliefs, that would bring the missing imam and they'd all go to heaven.
I'm not sure, Steve. I'm not sure that the regime, they may have their own geopolitical interests, but I'm not sure that the destruction of their country and their people is part of their religious beliefs.
We will continue this. Amir Handjani, Iranian-American attorney, a global energy executive. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. When we come back, Walter Williams, distinguished economist at George Mason University, will join us, talk a little bit about race on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.